Good morning, world. This is a sideshow. I'm Theodore Parker, and today is Monday, December 8th, 2025. Coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, East Coast of the United States. Currently, the weather here is snow. We have begun the meteorological winter, and winter officially begins on the calendar on December 21. Currently, we have a winter weather advisory until Monday, 1 p.m. Earlier, it was scheduled up until 10 a.m. Now it's been extended. So we have morning snow, high in the low 30s and low in the low 20s. The temperature currently is 29 and feels like 20. For all of you in tropical areas, might want to take a look at that. We're expecting some accumulation. Just looked out the window and it is snowing. Combined, I guess, with a little bit of rain, and it's turning into slush. So if you do have to be out on the roads today, go a little bit slower, add a little more distance for reaction time and road conditions. According to the weather report, expect tomorrow to be the next sunny day. Temperatures are noticeably lower than yesterday by 19 degrees. And conditions for outdoor activity are poor for running, cycling, and gardening. Pollen, for all of you allergy sufferers, no ragweed, no tree pollen, and no grass pollen. UV will be low today, and what is considered to be a light breeze at 9 miles per hour. Sunrise today will be at 7:41 a.m. It is currently 7:31 a.m. And sunset will be at 5:17 p.m. The National Weather Service, and on that note, the HUI is good. And Tuesday and Wednesday temperatures are predicted to be in the 40s in this area. The National Weather Service issued winter storm advisories for 6 states here in the United States, as up to 12 inches of snow is expected Sunday through Monday. The states are as follows: Alaska, Illinois, Michigan, South Carolina, surprisingly, Virginia, and Wyoming. So that concludes the weather report for this area. Again, the time is 7:32 a.m., Monday, December 8th, 2025. Today's show, the purpose of the news is to keep us updated and informed. Sometimes what we hear and see will cause some emotions. Presently, the United States has a president in office that each day brings one question: what's going to happen next? So the articles that I've chosen to present today will cover some of what affects us as citizens in this country and other countries around the world. Before I get into today's program, I have a thought that goes all the way back to the beginning of the Trump presidential run for president office and his election by vote into the Oval Office. And that question is, how did a convicted felon become president of the United States? Because a lot of the articles that I've chosen are filled with facts and some new details, I will be sharing them verbatim. That means in their entirety, word for word. So I have several. So we'll start with the ballroom. Originally, the ballroom was supposed to be, as I had stated before, a capacity for 650. And I compared that to the Martin Luther King celebration in January, breakfast in January, where the average capacity is 600 people. So apparently, being amongst the common folk wasn't good enough for President Trump. He had to do a one-upmanship thing. And so now an article has been presented by the Core Department, and it was published on December 5th, 2025, and it has to do with the ballroom. And again, remember that no official plans have been submitted for this. And for those of you who are not in construction, plans are presented with the understanding that whatever structure is going up should fit in with the surroundings, and also what effect it will have on the environment. So now, what was supposed to be a ballroom that did not affect any other parts of the White House property has escalated measurably. So I figured to take some words from some people to have some understanding about the whole process. And the core section of L has this article: Donald Trump replaces architect for White House ballroom and talk of expansion. If you remember, the original price was, I think, around $200 million. Now that's grown to $300 million. So architect Shalom Barnez will now lead the $300 million project. Here's the article. President Donald Trump has swapped architects for his under construction White House ballroom amid discussions to make the building larger. Architect Shalom Barnes will now take the reins of the project, replacing James McCurry, per the Washington Post. McCurry was the original architect in charge of designing the $300 million 9,000 square foot hall, which is set to replace the now demolished East Wing. Since being announced in July, the opulent ballroom has already grown in scale at least once, with its seating capacity ballooning 40%, from 650 to 900. The BBC reports that the proposed blueprint now shows the space will be able to accommodate 1,350 guests. So I guess there's a difference between serving the common folk and being one of the common folk. My comment. McCurry was allegedly against the idea of enlarging the edifice even further, as it was already almost double the size of the main White House residence. He will now be a consultant on the job. Based in Washington, D.C., Barnes leads a namesake architecture firm that has handled numerous government projects in the past 3 decades, including the rebuilding of the Pentagon in the wake of 9/11. His approach is more modernist when compared to McCurry's traditional style. Previously released renderings of the new ballroom show an exterior that matches the neoclassical White House, which was designed by architect James Hoban in 1800. Shalom is an accomplished architect whose work has shaped the architectural identity of our nation's capital for decades, and his experience will be a great asset to the completion of this project, White House spokesman Davis Ingle told the Post. So that's the latest news on that one. Like I said, all I have seen in regards to any plans or anything I can find out in the news or in the media is pictures. So here's President Trump. Again, the first one that I saw was all gilded gold. And that kind of went with that. This is another picture of the outside of the building. And that's how that went. There was another article that kind of elaborated about it a little more, saying that it's kind of taking on the tones of the renovations that he did with Mar-a-Lago when he took that over, which was a lot of gold, 23 karat gold leaf overlay, fixtures, chandeliers, and things of this nature. So this might be what he's aiming for with the White House ballroom. Just thought I would add that. For people inside and outside this country, air traffic controllers, air travel, plane tickets, plane travel, inside, outside the country, going other places and coming back. It wasn't too long ago that the air traffic controllers were having their moment as far as working was concerned and different conditions and things of that nature. So being as this is the holiday season right now, we're in between Thanksgiving, which is just finished, and heading into Christmas, and this is just a travel time of the year. So this one has to do with that situation, the air traffic controllers. So here we go. And this is taken from Travel, and it's dated November 23rd when it was updated from November 21. So this was just before Thanksgiving. And I think my empathy for this is because fresh out of high school, when I joined the military, and other friends of mine also joined, two brothers joined the Air Force, and that was their military occupational specialty, air traffic controller. So not so much that personal experience, but just that connection makes me have an interest in it. So this article says, U.S. air traffic controllers reject FAA's 10K Patriot bonus with a stern response and unresolved shutdown complaints. Many United States air traffic controllers, ATCs, are frustrated with the Federal Aviation Administration $10,000 bonus, which was revealed in a Department of Transportation news release. FAA Administrator Brian Bedford and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced on Thursday that the Patriot Work Incentive would be paid only to ATCs and technicians who maintain perfect attendance, and this part is underlined, while working unpaid during the 43-day government shutdown, initially igniting tensions about fairness. Out of 20,000 controllers and technicians, the funds will be awarded to 776 in total, less than 8% of the workforce. But the amount of money on the table, plus who will and won't receive it, isn't solely what's causing some ATC's resentment. Some feel the bonus, which has been promised no later than December 9, is insulting. And here's where my facts have been cleared up. For some odd reason, I was under the impression that air traffic controllers, because of the nature of the responsibility, were working like 4-hour shifts. This article definitely enlightens me on that. It continues. It feels like a slap in the face, one controller said about the bonus, who spoke on condition of anonymity, as reported by Guessing Headlights. The quote is, "We're working 6-day weeks, mandatory overtime, dealing with outdated equipment at some facilities, and they think $10,000 fixes that? Meanwhile, the stress is driving people out of the profession faster than we can train new ones," the anonymous air traffic controller said, according to Guessing Headlights. The payouts tone deafness is down to issues within the ATC sector over the past 40 years, again underlined, that remain unresolved, some of which two former non-retired ATCs, Jim Gee and Stephen Metz, recently discussed with the Travel in separate interviews. The government shutdown was merely the boulder that broke the camel's back. Let's face it, for controllers it wasn't exactly a straw, was it? Plus, the same 10,000K bonus resentment is quietly boiling among TSA staff, again underlined, albeit for slightly different reasons. Here's why some air traffic controllers feel the $10,000 Patriot bonus is an insult, what root problems in the industry linger that require more than a one-time payout to rectify, and what many ATCs and unions actually want instead of solitary payments. Some air traffic controllers feel the FAA's 10K shutdown attendance bonus is an insult because it doesn't solve long-term industry problems. Sure, some ATC's resentment doesn't necessarily mean they're outright rejecting being paid. However, it's the payout's tactless cord receiving a clapback. A one-time bonus doesn't resolve the deep-rooted industry-wide causes of their strife spanning years, which snowballed during the shutdown. On the day the government shutdown ended, the Travel spoke to Jim Gee, former U.S. air traffic controller of almost 40 years, who retired 8 months ago. He offered insights into how ATCs feel and the struggles they faced during and before the shutdown, further explaining the now frustrated response to the FAA's 10K bonus since it doesn't solve their workplace strains. How we're going to recover from this latest shutdown, I don't know. If controllers are going to, start coming back to work with the same kind of attitude. Jim told the Travel in an interview. Jim said controllers are a little bit beaten down and that they've seen it happen once before, citing the long shutdown in 2019, one of many federal shutdowns over the decades, again underlined. However, he said sentiments have spiraled downward because the latest shutdown is viewed completely differently, and that the faith in the system may not be there as a controller anymore. And that faith doesn't seem to be getting any better, even with a sizable monetary reward for their devotion to working unpaid for 43 days straight, because simply throwing money at the ATC's burnout as a thank you doesn't fix the long-term industry problems that create their exhaustion and their subsequent brewing discontent in the first place. Their union goals align with this notion as well. The National Air Traffic Controllers Association, a union representing around 20,000 controllers, advocates for solutions to industry challenges, not payouts that neither address nor solve the actual underlying causes. And it's those causes and lack of solutions causing unhappiness among many controllers and their unions, which came to a head during the shutdown. One of the various reasons why some ATCs are still walking out even after the shutdowns end. The two former ATCs recently interviewed by the Travel discussed some of these problems. Long-term ATC industry issues explain why some air traffic controllers are frustrated. One of the air traffic controller workforce long-lingering complaints is outdated technology. Some ATC towers and radar facilities rely on aging systems that make controllers' jobs far more difficult and less safe for travelers than they should be. In addition to speaking with retired air traffic controller Jim Gee, the Travel interviewed another former controller, Stephen Metz, whose career spanned from just after the strike in 1981 until his retirement in 2007. Metz brought up the FAA's old tech, which he said needs upgrading, while comparing it to Europe's far more modern setups. European equipment is state-of-the-art. Our system relies on old technology that is very difficult to update, which leads to reliability issues. Decades of government underinvestment has prevented comprehensive modernization, Metz told the Travel. Technology aside, though, one of the most significant problems for ATCs is staffing and consequential burnout. Controllers have struggled with staff shortages for years, long before the most recent shutdown. The sector needs approximately 14,600 ATCs to meet standards per the FAA. But Secretary Duffy confirmed it's short by over 3,000, as the FAA employs just shy of 11,000, give or take. That shortfall at busy airports across the country has led to increased pressure and stress on ATC teams who have long been working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, resulting in mass exhaustion, burnout, and low morale. On that note, Metz explained the reality of ATC work shifts, which in part results from worker shortages, and how they lead to disrupted sleep schedules and fatigue, which could be deadly given the risky nature of their jobs, wherein they hold travelers' lives in their hands. Quote, "It's horrible. You start off your week working evening shifts, and you transition to day shifts, and then you transition to a night shift. So you work 4 to 5 different shifts during the week. Can you imagine how that messes up your sleep schedule? And you had to maintain clarity in your brain when you went to work," Metz told the Travel. Naturally, the shutdown worsened the lack of controllers due to an above normal number of daily retirements, which Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced to the country. "I used to have about 4 controllers retire a day before the shutdown. I'm now up to 15 to 20 a day are retiring," Duffy told CNN. "So this is going to live on in air travel well beyond the time frame that this government opens back up," he added. But the lack of air traffic controllers is a historical issue, not a shutdown one. Staff shortages have been a decades-long problem for the industry. According to Metz, he told the Travel staffing has never changed over the 45 years that I've known air traffic control intimately, and that they don't seem to put enough priority on staffing and training. "I don't think we've ever reached the staffing numbers that FAA allows in facilities around the entire country. They always seem to be lacking. It never got to a correct point in my career," Metz told the Travel. Retirements and hiring freezes after the 2008 economic crisis got that ball rolling, though it could be argued that President Reagan started it in 1981 when he fired over 11,000 striking air traffic controllers after they refused to return to their posts following his ultimatum. Metz told the Travel during an interview that ATC training in the 80s and 90s did see a surge, so the industry had a greater workforce compared to today. "My career spanned a pretty good area because they trained so many ATCs back in the early and mid-'80s, leading into the 90s. So we were probably staffed better than facilities are now," Metz told Travel. Even so, controller numbers have continued to decline. Ever since the late 20th century, experienced controllers have increasingly exited their careers for early retirement or less stressful jobs. The pandemic saw another boost in exits, and the recent shutdown added to it even more, according to retired ATC Jim G. "It's going to be a very difficult road from this point. The shutdown and the pandemic have had an effect on hiring air traffic controllers. A lot of people have left and are leaving. People trying to retire are just skyrocketed," said Jim G in an interview with the Travel. Then there's the issue of training new controllers to fill the decades-long staffing gap and replace retiring and quitting controllers. Metz told the Travel it takes 2 to 4 years to train a new controller until they're qualified to work independently and safely. Retired air traffic controller Jim G also pointed out the same training time frame issue with the Travel in his interview. "You have to start at the bottom and work your way up. And you can't send everybody to New York Center or LaGuardia Tower and expect them to just, snap it up in a heartbeat and be successful within a couple of months. It just doesn't work like that. when they talk about the length of time it takes to get somebody ready to work and be competent enough to work a position by themselves and be safe, it can be 2 or 3 years, Jim Gee told The Travel. Lengthy time it takes a trainee controller to be ready for the job is indeed one of the industry's various unresolved staffing woes, but another one remains. Many new controllers quit before they even started. That's not funny. The shutdown compounded this challenge. The FAA's Air Traffic Controller Academy in Oklahoma City continued classes during the shutdown, but Transportation Secretary Duffy said some trainees have since questioned their career choices. The idea of a high-stress job with long hours, lots of overtime, and very few days off, wherein they'd have to work unpaid for weeks in future shutdowns, has put some trainees off. Many students have since dropped out of the academy as a result. Duffy also said last month that students' funding is running out. Training controllers get stipends when in education, but Duffy said it will be catalytic for them if that money dries up. Overall, NATCA President Nick Daniels previously said there are around 10,800 certified air traffic controllers, but the FAA needs around 4,000 more to meet targets. With increasing retirements, the time it takes to train new controllers and trainees dropping out before entering what should have been a long career keeping America's skies safe, that target could stay amiss until the FAA provides more effective solutions. Instead of just dishing out financial bonuses to tired ATCs working 6-day weeks, which is what the hoo-ha this controller bonus backlash is primarily about. So if not a $10,000 Patriot payout, excuse me, what exactly do air traffic controllers and their unions want? What many air traffic controllers and ATC unions are asking for, instead of just financial bonuses, according to some air traffic controllers and union representatives, they don't just want one-time payouts. Even if a chunky bonus after working unpaid for 40 days may well be financially helpful for many ATCs. What they do want, however, is something that will demand greater thought, funding, and consistent effort from the FAA in the long run. Changes to working conditions that allow them to do their jobs properly and keep air travel safe without suffering burnout. Their requests include competitive base salary increases that reflect inflation and cost of living adjustments, stable and predictable shift scheduling, increased staffing to reduce exhaustion and improve safety, fair overtime mandates, again to reduce fatigue and improve safety, faster hiring and streamlined training of students to replenish the ATC workforce more quickly, modernization of old, aging facilities and out-of-date equipment. Granted, Congress greenlighted a $12.5 billion budget bill in July to overhaul the United States aging air traffic control system and boost ATC hiring, which is a step in the right direction, though that has yet to bear fruit. Moreover, the DOT and FAA also noted that an additional $19 billion is necessary for the complete renovation. However, in another positive push forward, Secretary Duffy revealed plans to fast-track ATC training, the goal for which is to add almost 9,000 new controllers to the workforce by 2028 and ease staff shortages that have reached crisis levels. Still, although desperate government action appears to be more forthcoming, some controllers might feel these moves in the industry are too little too late. Their professional hardships, page jumped, probably too much for anybody. Okay, so there was probably a paragraph or two left, but as I said earlier, notice the attention to detail, particularly to the problems, the work conditions, training, and being understaffed by thousands of ATC controllers. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's coming in their behalf from what happened in November prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. Next up, fact check. Trump delivers long list of false claims at cabinet meeting. CNN. This was 5 days ago. And again, it's one of those things where we've kind of gotten used to having to fact check the president on things that he says from one moment to the next. And this one is no different. Oh, here we go. So, and it's 5 days ago from CNN. As usual, President Donald Trump made numerous false claims in his televised cabinet meeting on Tuesday. And as usual, most of them have previously been debunked. So a fact check of 13 of his inaccurate assertions, plus one more that needs context. Inflation in the economy. Trump repeated his false claim that grocery prices are down. Grocery prices were up about 2.7% from September 2024, about 1.4% from January 2025, the month Trump returned to office, and about 0.3% from August to September. Here's one. Prescription drug prices. Promise that he issued on prescription drug prices will slash drug prices by 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800%. Adding, nobody's ever heard it before. Later in the media, used 900% figure. Nobody has heard of such reductions because they are mathematically impossible. Inflation under Trump. Clausy claims since January we stopped inflation in its tracks. That's a vague phrase, but it's not true by any reasonable definition of stopped in its tracks. Inflation hasn't been stopped at all. Year-over-year inflation rate in September, 3.0% was the same as the rate in January. Inflation under President Joe Biden. He inherited the worst, Trump claims he inherited the worst inflation in history. Again, Trump inherited a 3.0 inflation rate, same as the most recent rate. He could have fairly said the year-over-year U.S. inflation rate hit a 40-year high under Biden in June 2022 when it was 9.1%, but that was not close to the all-time record of 23.7% set in 1920. Investment in the U.S. Trump repeated his false claim that we've secured commitments of over $18 trillion. This figure is fiction. At the time he spoke on Tuesday, the White House own website said the figure was $9.6 trillion. Gas prices. Trump's claim we are now at about $2.50 a gallon. This claim isn't false, since AAA found 7 states had Tuesday average gas prices below $2.60. Oklahoma was under $2.50 at about $2.40, almost exactly $3 a gallon for the rest of the states. Foreign affairs, U.S. said to Ukraine. Biden gave away $350 billion in aid to Ukraine, adding that's a massive amount of money. Excuse me. The federal Ukraine response says the U.S. had dispersed about $94 billion as of the end of January 2025, and had appropriated about $93 billion more. Trump and wars, claiming he stopped and settled 8 wars. While Trump has played a role in resolving some conflicts, at least temporarily, the 8 figure is a clear exaggeration. Strike on alleged drug boats. Defending his military strikes on alleged drug boats in international waters. Trump repeated this false claim. Every boat you see got blown up. We saved 25,000 on average lives. According to the facts, the Caribbean, where most of the strikes have occurred, international waters, is not known to be significant fentanyl smuggling route. This 25,000 number does not make sense. The total number of U.S. overdose deaths from all drugs in 2024 was about 82,000, according to the original federal data. Energy environment, China and gasoline. We have so much gasoline, China doesn't have gasoline, we do. It's not true that China simply doesn't have gasoline. China produced more than 4 million barrels per day of crude oil in 2024, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. China's production was much less than U.S. production, more than 13 million barrels per day in 2024. But China doesn't produce nearly enough to meet domestic demand. China's refiners processed more than 14 million barrels per day in 2024. Biden and electric cars. By 2030, everybody had to own an electric car under the Biden stupidity. This was not true. He had no policy that required Americans to own an electric car. 2024 policy was aimed to have electric vehicles make up to 35 to 56% of passenger vehicles by 2032. The 2022 election was a fake election, a rigged election, which he's been saying over and over. Crime in Washington. Trump falsely claimed that Washington, D.C. has no murders. Even before the attack, there continued to be homicides in Washington after Trump. Before the attack on the National Guard, the men and the woman, there were homicides still going on. Trump's bill in Social Security. Legislation did create an additional temporary $6,000 per year tax reduction for individuals aged 65 and older, with a smaller deduction for individuals earning $75,000 per year. So that's the information on that one. It's just full of facts today. These past few days, I've been busy on my own business, but these things have still caught my attention. And this one about changes again. That Trump is making in regards to what's going on. And this is related to, since we were talking about the Martin Luther King holiday, under saved, here we go. This is dated 1 day ago. Trump admin removes MLK Day, Juneteenth as holidays with free entry to national parks, but adds Trump's birthday. So this was interesting to me because it showed not only that the parks had free entry on these days, but what those days were used for. So here we go. These days have been recognized by national parks for decades. Tahi Moore, the executive director of a nonprofit outdoor advocacy group known as Soul Track Outdoors, said Trump's policy is deeply concerning. So he's decided to add his birthday to it, which is June 14th. Removing free entry days on MLK Day and Juneteenth sends a troubling message about who our national parks are for. These holidays hold profound cultural and historical significance for Black communities, and eliminating them as access points feels like a direct targeting of the very groups who already face systemic barriers to the outdoors. Moore said his organization's mission is to resist these kinds of systemic attempts and disguise exclusion as administrative or political decisions. Policies like this reinforce inequalities around access and visibly show how systems can create obstacles that keep communities of color from feeling welcomed in public places. What are some of the various activities that take place on National Park to honor MLK King Day? After Congress established MLK Day as a national day of service in 1994, various acts of caring have been taking place at national parks every year during the holiday. As the San Francisco Maritime National Historical Park, for example, volunteers come together on MLK Day to take care of the various plants. Similar activities take place at Big Thicket National Preserve in Texas as people plant native plants. Volunteers at Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas also remove graffiti, while people at Capitol Reef National Park in Utah pick up litter. So that's just an example of a misinterpretation of what is a good thing. Free entrance is also given on the 110th birthday of the National Park Service in 2026, as well as Constitution Day, Theodore Roosevelt's birthday, and Veterans Day. It seems not only myself, but other people have an opinion as to how to interpret what's been going on with Donald Trump and the Trump administration. So, this one is dated 2 days ago, and it's from Politics. Twitter users called Donald Trump narcissistic and egotistical for renaming the U.S. Institute of Peace for himself months after Elon Musk dismantled the organization through Doge efforts. What an unbelievable joke. Well, the title kind of explains everything itself. So reactions from American citizens have not been positive. Keep reading for more information. So this renaming it, this move comes one day before Trump hosts the presidents of Rwanda and Democratic Republic of the Congo to sign a peace deal. Not only has he renamed it on paper, he's added his name in large silver letters to two exterior sides of the building. So comments begin as follows. Across social media platforms, users have expressed their outrage at the move from Trump, who's taken credit for ending a number of conflicts worldwide since taking office earlier this year in an effort to be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. What an unbelievable joke, one user wrote. His most ludicrous move yet. And he to pull that freaking name right off that building, another person wrote. And here's kind of my sentiments, if I may. So looking forward to when we can scrap every reminder of this warped, egotistical, narcissist grifter from every building, bridge, park, airport, or truck stop that bears his name. Another comment reads, can't come soon enough. Ugh. The strain of his corruption is on everything. A final user wrote, he's like the one red sock in your laundry. Everything's pink. So we have comments from everyone about everything. And the next one, which seems suitable or followed suit, his approval rating has dropped since these things began, and this article is 14 hours old. Trump's approval plunges, and analysts say one of the most destructive cons in American history is about to fall. So he's sitting at about 36%, according to this article, which usually the administration likes to keep about 50% or 56%. And that 20% gap or difference is getting difficult for them to explain. The comment from Rex Hopke, U.S. Today column, is going to be spectacular as Trump remains horrendously unpopular and a swiftly deteriorating lame duck focused on building a glitzy ballroom or possibly invading Venezuela than on making life better for Americans. He frames Trump's grip on his supporters as a long-running deception that is finally running into a wall of reality. So the latest Gallup survey helps explain the tone. According to the most recent numbers, Trump's approval rating stands at 36%, with 60% disapproving, a new low of his second term. That kind of 20-point gap is the kind of political air pocket that usually sets off panic in any White House, especially one already staring down a tough midterm map. And back to Venezuela. In this instance, this is a comment from the Admiral, who Secretary of Defense Hicks commented was the one who carried out the orders for the strike on the boat. Let's see if I can find it here. So, from the Independent, okay. All right. So what happened was the Admiral says that after he ordered the strike on the boat, and the title of the article is, "The Admiral tells lawmakers that all 11 people on an alleged drug boat hit by a double-tap strike were on a list of military targets." And this report comes from the Independent, and it's only 14 hours old. So his explanation was that the first strike failed to kill everybody, and also failed to demolish the boat. So apparently there were survivors in the water. So Secretary of Defense Hicks claims that after he saw the first strike, he left the room to take care of some other responsibilities. So he didn't see the second strike. So the second strike hits, and that's supposed to take care of survivors. Where the conversation brings a discussion is because once somebody on a list has been targeted and that thing has been executed, if there are any survivors, they're supposed to be taken into custody and all other international protocols applied. But for them to go for a second strike to kill them is breaking that protocol, even though it's in international waters, with a terroristic overtones. Again, going back to the original premise that there were drugs involved in it, no drugs have been found. And now they're saying that the drugs were not headed to the United States anyway, but to another country in South America. Suriname. So wherever Suriname is, that's where the boat was supposed to be going, to meet a larger boat. So that's the story now. Again, getting back to rules and regulations, Trump told crews working on his White House ballroom to ignore permitting, zoning, or code requirements. And again, that's from the Independent 6 days ago. And here's one that kind of sets the tone for everything that I presented this morning on Monday, December 8th. And it comes from YouTube. And I'm kind of swinging back and forth as to the video, because it is a video. I wouldn't want to violate anybody's privacy issues. but I think it would be okay if I let you hear the audio. Now, this is a case of coming from Representative Joe Negussi, Negusc, out of Colorado, and he's discussing the Clean Air and Water Act with somebody that's there to give testimony. So, let me see if I can get the volume up for you.
Hollywood doesn't work in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay, let me see if I can start it again.
And what works in the holiday in Hollywood doesn't work in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
I hear and I see you're reading from there. I get it. I'm not. These aren't gotcha questions. So I think you answered it. I think your point, what you're saying, is that you don't believe that the Biden administration, the EPA under the Biden administration, had the authority to grant the waivers that it did to these states.
I do not.
Okay. Do you believe that the Trump administration has the authority to grant waivers to polluters?
I do not believe that the Trump administration is granting waivers.
You don't?
I do not.
Are you familiar with this new announcement? I'll read you this article. This is just from 2 weeks ago. EPA offers industrial polluters a way to avoid rules on mercury, arsenic, and other toxic chemicals. Are you aware of that?
I believe that we're discussing the California.
No, I hear you. You just answered. You said that. I think your testimony a minute ago was that you're not aware that the administration is pursuing any potential waivers for polluters or for states, for that matter, to avoid compliance with the Clean Air Act, right? Clearly, that's not. I guess you're not aware, but you're aware now, right? I've made you aware of that. Let me read you just a paragraph from this article. The EPA has set up an electronic mailbox to allow regulated companies to request a presidential exemption under the Clean Air Act to a host of Biden-era rules. Companies were asked to send an email by Monday seeking permission from President Donald Trump to bypass the new restrictions. This is a part of, a push to roll back dozens of environmental regulations. The Trump administration is offering coal-fired power plants and other industrial polluters a chance for exemptions for requirements to reduce emissions of toxic chemicals, such as mercury, arsenic, and benzene. You're familiar with this now?
With your reading, I think it is important that we return the discussion to what this CRA...
I hear you, Mr. Joyce, I get it. You've testified at great length about this particular... I get why you're supporting the CRA. I understand that. Seems like you don't want to talk about this, what they're calling the polluters portal. And I think you can understand why I would be frustrated and the people that I represent in Colorado would be frustrated. Because on the one hand, it sounds like you're taking the position that the EPA, under a Democratic administration, has no authority to grant a state an exemption to be able to impose standards that are a bit higher to protect clean air and clean water. But under the Trump administration, it seems like, unless you want to disabuse me of this, you're completely fine with the Trump administration granting exemptions to polluters to avoid the requirements of the Clean Air Act with respect to these chemicals that are regulated. Do you understand that discrepancy, why that would strike people as a bit confounding?
And what works in the in Hollywood?
So I think that kind of self-explanatory as the expression goes. Well, I've taken almost an hour of your time this morning with the whys and the wherefores and whodunits. So I thought it would be nice, after all of that administrative politics and so forth and so on, to kind of end things on a nice note. So I think this one will fit that purpose. And see if, and this is a news item, folks, so bear with me, it's worth it. It is worth it. Okay. Like I said, I usually like to end the program on a feel-good note, and I think this particular article definitely qualifies for that. As soon as, oh, here we go. And it's coming from Benzinga, which is, I think, a stock reporting magazine or firm. And it's dated from 1 day ago. Shaq gave up $40 million Reebok deal after a mom smacked cash out of his hand and yelled, "You're charging babies all this money." So he partnered with Walmart. Basketball and sneakers go together like popcorn and a movie. Michael Jordan changed the entire business with a silhouette that practically deserves its own Hall of Fame wing. Kobe Bryant made low tops cool at a time nobody expected it. LeBron James' latest pairs still disappear before lunchtime. Superstars play ball and build shoe empires along the way. Shaquille O'Neal fit the mold at first. A major Reebok deal, his own signature sneaker, huge campaigns, the whole thing. But Shaq was never the velvet rope type. He's the guy fans run into at a grocery store or a gas station. Kindness has always been part of the brand. That's why one single encounter stuck with him. It didn't just change his mindset, it changed his whole business. Shaq shared this story on the Full Send podcast in 2021. At the time, he was deep into a $40 million Reebok deal, and the shoes were priced like most star sneakers. High. Then, after a game, a mother made a beeline toward him. No autograph requests, no friendly chit-chat, just frustration. She went straight for the truth as she saw it. You're charging these babies all this money for your shoes. Shaq tried to offer a quick fix by reaching into his pocket and handing over about $2,000 in cash. I was like, "Ma'am, I don't make the prices. Here you go," he said, "full send." But instead of taking the money, she smacked it right out of his hand. A reaction that stuck with him. He walked away stunned, realizing she had a point. He said he told himself, "You know what? She's right." And that was it. The moment everything flipped. He cut ties with Reebok that same day. He even told them to keep the remaining money he was owed. He finished the season in their shoes, but he was moving on. No lawyers circling, no public spectacle, just a clean break driven by a change of heart. Where did he go next? Walmart, his favorite store, as he called it on the podcast. He wanted shoes kids could afford without feeling singled out in the school hallway. So he brought over real design talent, chose every color and every detail himself, and focused on one core belief. Kids don't mind a $20 shoe, but they definitely mind when it looks like one. The first Shaq shoes hit Walmart shelves around 1999 to 2000, selling for $19 to $29. Accessible, cool enough to wear proudly. A very different kind of sneaker empire started right there. The results tell the story. In 2016, Shaq posted on Facebook, "Laugh all you want, the Shaq brand has sold over 150 million pairs of affordable shoes for kids at Walmart." His reach has grown too. He now has a fresh line of performance sneakers priced from $40 to $50, along with a lifestyle model at $35. They are available through Kohl's, where the goal stays the same: affordability without embarrassment. Shaq didn't build sneakers meant to flex on others. He built sneakers meant to be worn. And he did it because one mother reminded him exactly who he wanted to serve. A single moment outside an arena rewrote a $40 million chapter in sports business history. Shaq listened, and millions of kids got to lace up because of it. That's it. Hashtag